Okay, in this video we're going to set up your wall types in Revit. So we're going to start with the easiest ones, which are your interior walls. We're going to do your 4.5-inch interior partition wall for most of your walls. And we'll modify that as a 6.5-inch interior wall. These are the walls that will have plumbing in them, so stuff behind toilets and showers and things of that nature. So we'll start with that 4.5. It's going to have a structure of softwood lumber, and that'll be 3.5 inches for our 2x4 wall, and then we'll have our plywood at 1/2 inch on each side. Not plywood, gypsum on each side. That's our drywall. Going over to Revit here. Just finished up that levels one, so I'm going to go to the floor plan, and yep, we'll hit save project. You're going to get that a lot, probably every half hour that you work. Then I'm going to go to wall, and there are a bunch of basic wall types that are in here. So you can take a look at some of those. Some of them may be close to what you're doing. Eventually we'll talk about curtain walls and things like that. It can be fun for some of those modern designs, but I'm going to just begin with like a generic 6-inch wall, and I'm going to go to edit type. Now I don't want to modify this wall. I want to duplicate it. So I want to duplicate it, and I'm going to call this my interior 4.5 inch. And if you want to put like your name after that or something like that, you can, so it pops up faster. It's easier for you to read. You can do that. So I'll just hit OK on this. Notice that it changed to interior 4.5. Those are the other wall types that are already in there. We don't want to screw those up, so we're going to go with this one. I'm going to hit the edit button here. And right now you can't see anything until you hit the preview. So this gives you a preview. And right now we just have a 6-inch slab. There's no layers here other than the one structural layer that has no assignment for material in it. So I'm going to insert a layer here, and we'll move that up to the top, and then we're going to insert another layer, and we're going to move that down to the bottom. I moved the wrong one there. Let's grab this one, move that down. The core boundary is the structure of your wall. Outside of that are your finishes. So this core, inside the core, that is going to be 3.5 inches. So type that in, 3.5 inches. Make sure you have inches there. It's going to put that in feet. It's going to look enormous, and it will be. The gypsum wall board will be 1/2 inch, so 0.5 inches on the interior and exterior. And notice that it says exterior side here, interior side. For your interior wall, it doesn't matter. They're both identical. When you get to do your exterior wall, if you're doing brick or something, make sure it's on the top side, on the exterior side when you do this. Now, right now, they're all just set to just by category for material. I'm going to leave the inside the core structure. I'm going to change these to a finish. So I'll just set them both to finish 1 there. And then we'll go in and assign some categories. So you select where it says by category and hit this little browse button. This is going to take you into your materials browser. And you should be able to just search. I mean, you can scroll down through here if you want. But there should be one softwood lumber. At some point you're going to need additional material libraries. You can open those up down here and see additional assets that you can bring in, but this is your project material library. We'll get into some of those a little bit later on. So I'm just going to hit OK on that, and then I'm going to select these to gypsum. So I'll select where it says by category, and I'm just going to type that in up top here. Maybe my computer wants to work with me here. Alright, so gypsum wallboard, we hit OK on that. I'll do the same thing on this one. Gypsum again, there it is, hit OK. So this wall is set up. This is my 4.5 interior wall. I'll hit OK on that, hit OK again. Always make sure you hit OK through those. And then I'd be ready to draw. My default wall height's 20 feet right now. We'll get into that in the next video, but again, I'm ready to kind of work around it and draw my walls in. Now I want to make a wet wall here, so I'm going to go back to the wall tool, and I'm going to go, so I have my 4.5 selected. I'll go to edit type, and I'm going to duplicate this as well, and I'm going to rename this as my interior 6.5 inch wet wall. So we'll hit OK on that. Notice I am now modifying the 6.5 inch wet. The only thing I need to do in the structure here is to take this up to 5.5 inches. Because it's a 2x6, so it's 5.5 inches on the interior. The core, and then you have the gypsum wall board still the same. So I'll hit OK on that one. All right, and then if I go to draw this wall, you should see that, you know, this in fact is a thicker wall type as we go around. A note on these layers here. When you intersect, what the core does is if I do a T-shaped wall, it allows the structure to intersect. So if I bring in another wall and I intersect it into this one, I don't know if we're going to be able to see this with fine detailing on. Let's see if we zoom in, change our scale maybe to a larger scale. Let's see, 1 inch equals a foot. Now you can see how it wrapped the what's outside of the core. So our finishes, it wraps around. If you didn't have that right, it would run a piece of drywall behind and in between those two pieces of core. So it's important we set things up like that as we work. All right, so our next wall type is going to be your exterior wall. Again, this will be different for a lot of you. I'm going to use the one I did in the little tutorial, the brick wall. So you have your sketch that you uploaded. Now, this part, the core is the same as your wet wall. It's going to be a 2x6. It's going to have gypsum wallboard on the inside. On the outside, you might have plywood, you might have rigid foam board, and then whatever your exterior finish is. If it's going to be stucco, if it's going to be brick, whatever that is. So I'm going to go with the exact setup that I have here, so we can kind of continue that through. So I'm just going to pull that. I got that on paper here in front of me. I'm going to pull that up in Revit. I'm going to begin, again, in the wall tool, and I have my 6.5 wet wall selected. So I'm going to edit type, and once again, duplicate it. And then this I'm going to say is my brick wall. And I know my brick wall should be 12.125 inches. You don't need to put that in there, but if it helps you find that wall faster in the list of walls, you can do that. You name that what makes sense to you. So we'll go in and edit here. And remember, the bottom side, this is our interior, so that's going to stay the same. Up here, this is what we're going to change out. So this gypsum wallboard on my sketch was rigid insulation. So let's see what we can find there. Let's see. All right, there's rigid insulation. Very good. So we're going to put that in, and we're going to bump this in my wall. This was 1 inch. And then we're going to insert another layer, and this rigid insulation, that is not a finish now, that is going to be a thermal layer. And this next layer, this is our air space. So if we look at our sketch, we have an air space for the vent and for moisture to go through. So we have a 1 inch vented air space. So we'll pop that in next. So we'll set our thickness to 1 inch. And then we'll go by category, and we should be able to search just for air. All right, we have air. Hit OK. And then the last one we have, and that air also needs to be set to thermal air layer. And then the last one we have, this will be our finish. I'm going to switch that to finish 2. We're using finish 1 for the gypsum. Out here, we're going to use our brick. So you can go up in here and you can type in brick and see what shows up for you. Now, if you're using stone or something like that, you might need to go into one of these material libraries and search for some of that. But I'm just going to use this common brick here. Not to get too into this at this point, there's all kinds of stuff you can do over here. Like you could modify the picture that it uses for its graphics. You can override a color. So if you don't want it to show up this brick color, you could say, hey, I want it to show up as cyan, or I want it to be pink. Whatever works for you. This is the default. You can change some of that stuff. I wouldn't get into it at this point. And then my brick was 3.625 inches, 3 5/8. All right, so there is my wall type. One of the other ways you're going to get into this, you're going to view these in the section wall type. We're going to do this much later once we get some floor plans done, but typically you're in that floor plan view. Notice our core boundary is the green line. That's right outside of here. So I'll hit OK on this and make sure I hit OK on this one. And then I am ready to draw my exterior walls. Now, if you're looking here, and again, I changed my scale so you could see what this was here. When you're in a regular like 1/8 inch scale, you're not going to see all these layers. And I also put fine detailing on. So if I go back to coarse, or if I even go to medium, depending on the scale I'm in, if you're an 1/8 inch scale, you might not see all that stuff. All right, But I'm seeing all those different layers in there, especially when we get into the brick here. When you start to draw your walls here, you have to look at some of the different wall tools, and that's going to be our next video as we start to draw some of our walls in. So make sure you get your wall type set up, however many that is, and then we'll take it from there. So